There was a girl once, Mara. She wasn't born quiet. She wasn't born timid or careful or soft-spoken. No, she started off loud, radiant, curious, a child who asked endless questions and laughed with her whole body, a child who believed the world would love her simply because she existed. If you love deep psychological stories and breakdowns that feel a little too real, make sure to subscribe, like, and share, because the next story might just explain you to yourself. But the world, or at least her corner of it, taught her otherwise. Her mother didn't scream. She didn't hit. She didn't rage. Her mother wounded in a quieter way, with sighs, with disappointment, with coldness sharp enough to bruise. Her father wasn't cruel either. He just wasn't there, a ghost in a house full of silence. So Mara learned the rules early. Be small. Be pleasant. Don't need too much. Don't feel too loudly. Don't be inconvenient. She tiptoed through her childhood the way some children tiptoe through war zones, careful not to disturb anything that could turn into emotional shrapnel. People said she was mature, responsible, such a well-behaved girl. But what damaged Mara wasn't the neglect itself. It was the denial of it, the pretending, the smiles in photos, the way no one ever said, "Hey, something's wrong." Silence can be a form of violence. Emotional invisibility is its own kind of trauma. And trauma doesn't just stay in memory. It settles in the body. It rearranges the nervous system. It warps how a person understands love, safety, and belonging. Mara grew into someone everyone admired. Calm, reliable. The friend who carried everyone's burdens but never mentioned her own. She became an expert at reading rooms, sensing moods, managing tension. A shapeshifter, a peacekeeper. But underneath, she was hollowing out. That's what unhealed wounds do. They don't disappear, they wait. Her unraveling began quietly. The exhaustion, the insomnia, the constant tightness in her chest, the feeling that something was wrong even when nothing obvious was happening. She thought it was stress. She thought it was burnout. She thought it was her fault. What she didn't know was that her body had finally stopped protecting her from the feelings she buried decades earlier. The panic attacks came next, not dramatic collapses. No, hers were subtle. A wave of dizziness, a buzzing in her limbs, a sudden need to escape a perfectly safe room. She started losing her reflection in the mirror, not literally, but emotionally. She recognized her face, but not the person behind it. That's what the false self does. It grows so strong that the real self becomes a ghost. One afternoon at work, the mask cracked. A normal day, emails, tasks, small talk, and then suddenly, the air was too tight. Her vision dimmed, her heart raced, her thoughts turned into static. She hid in the restroom, sat on the cold floor, and felt her entire world tilt. Not violently, quietly, as if her psyche had whispered, "I can't hold this anymore." People think breakdowns are loud, but the most devastating ones happen in silence, when a lifetime of swallowed emotions finally reaches its limit. Mara tried therapy. The first time, she tried to be impressive, polite, articulate, put together. She told the therapist she was just overwhelmed. They gave her coping tools, breathing exercises, grounding techniques, useful things, but not the things she needed. Because what she needed wasn't stabilization, it was truth. It wasn't until her second attempt that everything shifted. She didn't try to be good. She didn't try to be smart. She didn't try to be likable. She just broke. She cried in a way she hadn't cried since childhood, the kind of crying that shakes the soul loose, the kind of crying you apologize for even though it's the most honest thing you've done in years. Her therapist listened and said softly, "You are not falling apart. You are finally feeling." Those words cracked her open, because Mara had spent her entire life performing stability. She didn't know what authenticity felt like. She didn't know what grief felt like. She didn't know what anger felt like, because she'd been taught that good girls don't get angry. But anger is not the enemy. Anger is the body saying, "I deserved better." She started remembering things differently, not as isolated memories, but as a pattern, a map of emotional neglect woven through her entire development. She remembered the birthdays no one asked about, the tears she hid because crying made her dramatic, the achievements dismissed as not enough, the days she tried to speak and was told to stop overthinking, the moments she needed comfort and received silence. She realized she had never been comforted, only corrected, and that realization felt like betrayal. Her therapist said something she wasn't prepared for. You survive by becoming someone else. Now that survival is no longer needed, your real self wants to return. This process isn't neat. It isn't pretty. It isn't gentle. It felt like drowning in emotions she didn't have names for. She journaled relentlessly, scribbles, confessions, symbols, repeats of the same line. I didn't deserve this. Those words became her turning point, not because they gave her closure, but because they gave her permission. Permission to be angry, permission to be sad, permission to exist. Healing didn't start with hope. It started with honesty, with admitting the loneliness she carried, with grieving the childhood she never had, with forgiving herself for surviving in the only ways she knew. And slowly, not all at once, something shifted. Not joy, not peace, not clarity, something simpler, a sense of self. She began setting boundaries, small ones at first, saying no, resting without guilt, letting people down without apologizing for needing space. She wasn't cured. Healing doesn't work that way. But she was no longer lost, because the journey wasn't about becoming new. It was about remembering who she was, before the silence taught her to disappear. If you've ever felt like you're losing your mind, like you're unraveling from the inside, understand this. You are not broken. You are not failing. You are not crazy. You are emerging. The collapse was never the end. It was the beginning. The moment your soul whispered, "I'm still here. Please listen." And for the first time, Mara did.